for a female going to male is they would continue, you'd continuously take testosterone pretty well the rest of their life.
It's almost like
shocker.
patient for life, that kind of thing.
Yeah, in the beginning it's a lot of doctor visits, but after a while you space it out.
Like
and
nothing
it's
is said
every
here.
6 to 12 months, which is being a patient, but doesn't seem so bad.
I was under the impression
shocked?
that I was going to take a cure and be healed, and I didn't understand as a mentally ill child that I was signing up for lifelong medicalization.
So, and I can say from here as well, there's a lot of our folks at our clinic who
Like we get no details that we can verify anything or come to a conclusion of our own. We have to rely on their conclusions.
The LGBTQIA spectrum as well.
Person on the spectrum as well, 21 years old. He was coming here, or at the time he was coming here for mental health, and he's getting his vagina next week.
Wow. Anyone who says that you can change your sex is lying to you. You
If
will
you
be
put dark on
chasing
this
constant
music over it,
drugs
they look
and
evil.
surgeries
Yeah.
for the rest of your
You can
life.
actually-
10 years old coming by themselves.
10, 11, yes.
Most of the kids are nowhere in any kind of a brain space to really talk about it in a serious way.
True hormone therapy, it is life-changing and is difficult to come back from. Like, it's a forever.
So we brought in our own therapist to write letters to rubber stamp our surgeries.
And they have to understand that the surgery itself is irreversible.
Like all of that sounded very spooky, very scary. But I can't verify who said any of it unless they show it in the video, and then we'll probably won't be able to verify in what context it was said at all, because they've removed every specification that has to do with anything. They talk about years, but they don't give you how many exactly. You can't read between the lines to get to the truth at all in Veritas videos. Who the fuck is this guy? I know James O'Keefe is out, but who the fuck is this guy?
Setting the medical agenda. Now, those encouraged to seek these life-altering treatments and surgeries are usually the most vulnerable. Our investigation now reveals just how many of these patients are on the autism spectrum. And as you will see, doctors are very willing to move forward.
So I can also say from here, there often is, or my experience here has been a heavy amount of crossover between folks who are somewhere on the spectrum and some somewhere on the LGBTQIA.
Oh my god,
well.
I'm shocked. This is my shock face.
A lot of people who are somewhere on the autism spectrum experience a high level of introspection that a lot of other people don't necessarily experience. And I can say from here as well, there's a lot of our folks at our clinic who are on the autism spectrum as well.
I actually transitioned someone with your, actually funny story, just between us.
So they probably are interviewing regarding autism in a positive light. Like that's their cover story, it seems. But they're doing like a reporting job. So that's why there's no cameras, and they think, that would be my guess as to how they got these people to open up.
Person on the spectrum as well, 21 years old. He was coming here, or at the time he was coming here for mental health, and he came down here, and he just sat down, and he said to me, like, I'm like, so what are you here for? He's like, oh, I saw you do transgender. I said, yes. He's like, well, I think I need to get my penis cut off. Like, where did this come off? And I called his whole family in here, and everyone was like, yeah, no, I always thought he was very femmy, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I asked the psych here, I thought I would point you to our psych, but he was like, I don't know, like, that's kind of autistic, it's been spread, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, transitioning is not easy. It doesn't happen like this. You have to inject yourself with hormones, you have to take pills, you have to do blood work. It's, if he makes it, then let's do it. And he is getting his vagina next week.
Wow. 1 year. So there's no talk about how many years this took place over. Or he made a story funny rather than accurate. Yeah, he came down and said, I think I need to get my dick chopped off. Okay. Project Veritas just by just airing this entire story, they made it look like they just rushed him off into the world. But as I said, he interviewed the entire family. That doesn't happen overnight. This took years probably in reality. But he made it funny. But if you remove the humor from it, sounds kind of bad.
Percentage of these transgender identified children and youth are on the autistic spectrum. If you talk to detransitioners, many of them are autistic. They will report that they have autism, and they will talk about how they mistakenly believed that the problems they struggled with autism or the symptoms they have of autism were mismatched with what they believed was gender dysphoria. So they're kind of being preyed upon.
What this sounds like, rather, is like I can imagine the highest number of people who are detransitioning. I think a vast majority of them are on the autism spectrum. I can see there be a legitimate request for there's something we need to do here. The answer they have not arrived at. The answer is we need to do more research. Why is it mainly people on the autism spectrum who detransition? And I know the numbers of detransitioners in general is very low, but that's an interesting thing to study. There's something there, perhaps. Maybe we can learn something new about sexuality and autism, or self-identity and autism. Maybe we can start to recognize, you know what? These people maybe need to go through a different process to get to where they can be happy. For some of them, that might be to bodily transition as well. For others, it might not. Like, that's the questions we should be asking, not whatever the fuck this is.
The impression that I was going to take a cure and be healed, and I didn't understand as a mentally ill child that I was signing up for lifelong medicalization. I didn't conceptualize the idea that I was going to be injecting this every 2 weeks forever, and going to appointments and getting needles and blood work and surgery after surgery and revisions and the next one, and like the clavicle shortening, the hairline, everything. I didn't understand that there would always be something to chase. I thought I was just being given the cure.
Throughout our investigation.
Okay, that seems highly selectively edited, first of all. Can there be something to be said that some people maybe needs to have a second round of barriers to climb over? Can it be said that some clinics are hasty to judgment? Sure. The emphasis on some, though.
Our experts and subjects have echoed the sentiment that there is rarely an alternative to the currently affirming treatments to gender dysphoria, presenting it as a life or death decision.
So it's called like dysphoria. It's like gender dysphoria is what it's called, and it's usually you just being so uncomfortable in the body that you're in. Yeah. And if a 10-year-old's feeling that, like, then you kind of get nervous about depression and like what that can lead into. And like, unfortunately, sometimes individuals, eventually could take their life. So it's almost like if someone really realizes it, by that age, and they have that gender dysphoria but want to, change it, those are those better outcomes.
Parents are being...
So that's perfectly fine. I know they've removed context to make it sound worse, but imagine someone calls in, have questions surrounding their kid being tenured, maybe talking talking about suicide, whatever. I don't know how exactly they worded it, but to make him talk about those things specifically in a delicate way, because he's a fucking doctor. Of course, he's going to be delicate in how he talks about suicide. So yeah, it's just propaganda. We know that, but I mean, that's how they did it.
Blackmailed by being told that if they have a trans child, that their child is more likely to commit suicide. And so they're basically told, would you rather have a live son or a dead daughter? Would you rather have a trans kid or a dead kid?
My mom was crying a lot. She didn't understand. She was sad. And
at some point,
said, would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son? It's time to be excited about a boy. While she was crying.
A dead daughter or a living son?
They said it was transition or suicide.
Then I went to university at UC San.
Like, that sounds like a bad clinic. You have to take this up in stages. And it depends on the parent, I guess, as well. But yeah, it sounds like she's critiquing how the clinic handled it rather than transitioning in general.
Santa Cruz and like
Kat Cattinson. Oh, that bitch. All right. She was surprised when her voice started to change when she transitioned. Nobody had told her that her voice was going to change if she transitioned. And all she did, I think she was on hormones for like a year, maybe at most. There's something fishy in her story, I remember. But okay, that's that bitch. Of course, she's on Veritas.
The ideology was very big there. And I was almost encouraged to transition. I feel like I started considering like, okay, well, maybe I should transition because apparently I'm going to commit suicide if I don't. And I called up Planned Parenthood and there was essentially no pushback. I talked to a doctor over the phone and I obtained testosterone in like 30 minutes. And I mean, I was an adult, but I hear similar stories from like other detransitioners who transition as minors that also obtained puberty blockers or hormones or surgery like pretty easily, like within an appointment or two.
We always hear surgery within an appointment or two. Yeah. Proof or it didn't happen, bitch. Puberty blockers, I can see that. Cross hormones, maybe if they're like 16, 17, maybe. Puberty's almost over. Let's just get in there, maybe. But I doubt it.
I do have some lasting issues from transitioning as an adult, but it's not nearly to the same degree as it would have been if I'd been an adolescent.
Meet Dr. Matthew Warnken, a pharmacist in Austin, Texas. He gives our undercover journalist further insight.
724.
It's like gender.
So it's this guy. Okay, so he's a pharmacist. Pharma D. Oh my God, he's a pharmacist.
I don't like with
the long last
been an adolescent.
So probably okay. So probably they called him up, and he's like, and then they go. So my daughter is being prescribed these types of drugs. What is happening here? Blah 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 blah. Oh, suicide? You say? Yeah. And then they go into and being delicate because he's a fucking professional.
Meet Dr. Matthew Warnken, a pharmacist in Austin, Texas. He gives our undercover journalist further insight into the long-lasting effects of these gender therapy pharmaceuticals.
As far as the medications are concerned, is there a point where we can stop taking? You know, is there a point that they stop taking it and then they're good and the transition's permanent? How does that work?
No, so with like you would stop. They would eventually stop taking hormone blockers, but for a female going to male, if they would continue, you would continuously take testosterone pretty well the rest of their life, just so that you're in because if they stop taking testosterone, their bodies will kind of revert back. So then stopping that, some things do revert back, but like when they've done it before puberty, some of those don't revert back as much, if you will.
The permanent effects of
What's the issue? Yeah. This is nothing. This is a revelation to them. This is like, oh my God, it doesn't revert back as much. Yeah, bitch. Of course not. We know.
Testosterone are things like facial hair, body hair, enlargement of the clitoris, clitoromegaly, and the last one is vocal pitch drop. And so those are effects that once they happen, don't reverse.
Sometimes, if anything, like there could be a little more of those side effects, and not necessarily. I mean, it could be aggression. I just say aggression because people, correlate that sometimes with testosterone, but it shouldn't be that much. But there could be, let's say it's a dose that you take every 2 weeks. Like, could be rather like, right when they take that dose, that could actually just give them energy, but then they might get a little more lethargic as the 2 weeks go on, and then they take their dose and it's like, oh, I have more energy.
I would go through withdrawal. Like, I would feel more tired and more anxious and less confident and more agitated. Like I needed it, but I was told that
you were becoming a boy or a man. I don't know when you transition, but yeah. I was becoming more aggressive when I was transitioning from woman to man. It was like I was going through withdrawal. No, you were transitioning to becoming a man. There are new hormones, new feelings you have to overcome, I guess. I've never thought of transitioning myself. How the fuck do I know that? And someone who has thought about it or have gone through some of it didn't think of that. How will this change me?
That's because my body needed those hormones because I was a boy.
Mm-hmm. A major point that many of our subjects touched on revolved around, quote, family planning. While suggesting the options of expensive alternatives, they made it clear that pursuing these gender treatments almost indefinitely leads to infertility.
So something that our providers do counsel families and youth about is about family planning, essentially, and what their thoughts are around that. There's measures that can be taken for things like preserving eggs. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it on 11, 12-year-olds, with obviously the asterisk being that a 10-year-old is likely not going to be able to say assuredly whether that they want to have kids in the future.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be able to.
Yeah. And they save the eggs or the sperm in case they want to.
So if ever decided to go back. So some of these things, I mean, some of them are permanent, like, changes. So depending on how the body changes, it might not be able to naturally birth a baby. So there are other routes now. I mean, we've gone so far, with like in vitro fertilization and things like that, and there's even surrogates. So fortunately, like, science is there in that regard, I don't know, like, pricing and stuff like that, but if there's enough, like, changes to the physical body, I don't know if they would be able to, have a baby naturally
10-year-old doesn't necessarily think about family planning. I don't know any 10-year-olds, outside of playing dress up that might identify as wanting a family. But these are just questions, I think as you move further and further into the transition process, those conversations do become bigger, just to make sure if he did want to have a family, does that mean that, he would want to preserve his eggs to do that?
Through hormone therapy, there is long-term possible side effects of it is life-changing, and is difficult to come back from. It also requires both parents to be on board.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah,
it only requires, so here are my words.
Yeah.
We have to have one parent's consent. If we know that there's another parent who's not on board, we can't start hormone therapy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. No, that's fair.
The medicines that I...
If your partner is abusive, don't tell us. Okay, I think that's bad of her to go. I understand why, but I think it's bad. There should, however, be so maybe the ruling. This is the okay. Interesting. I just an idea. Maybe the father isn't even in the picture because he was abusive, and she has full custody. And she told the nurse all of this, and made it believable as hell. And the nurse goes, we still need the father's signature, unfortunately, if we know there's a father. Don't tell us there's a father when you come in for this. That would be my speculation as to how they got there. If it's shared custody, I don't think it's going to be easy to pass it by the father, who's going to be able to, get full custody at that point. Then, so that's my speculation here.
Are not magic medicines. They're not antidepressants. They're not going to change your thinking. They just literally change the physical body a little bit, or in the case of puberty blockers, they just stop those changes.
It's almost like she'll be a patient for life, that kind of thing. I don't know how I feel about that.
Now, that's an interesting thought. I mean, it depends upon what wants. I have a number of patients who, in the beginning, it's a lot of doctor visits because I want to make sure I'm not messing somebody up. I want to make sure they're not having an adverse reaction to testosterone or things like that. But, after a while, you space it out, and it's like every 6 to 12 months, which, is being a patient, but doesn't seem so bad.
So, these providers perceive that it's helping them, and they're like, all fast track these young people. And, maybe sometimes it's coming from a good place. Like, they're like, okay.
But again, sorry, I continue to watch because I was waiting for the hammer to drop. I was waiting for something to come from this that I was like, oh my God. Yeah? We know this. Like I said earlier, we are aware it's going to be a lifelong treatment. And it's at the end of the day, this is a critique of capitalism, not of transitioning.
After a while, you space it out, and it's like every 6 to 12 months, which, is being a patient, but doesn't seem so bad.
So, these providers perceive that it's helping them, and they're like, all fast track these young people. And, maybe sometimes it's coming from a good place. Like, they're like, okay, well, this will make this young person happy or whatever. But In the end, it's just very damaging, and it makes me angry that children are being used for adults to validate their own gender identity.
I also suffer from chronic pain. I have joint pain and also burning in my neck and my shoulders because I'm disproportionate now. My hips are really small and my shoulders are too big for my frame, and so it hurts to hold myself up. And then I have pain in my throat. I can't talk for super long periods of time, but worse, I lost my ability to sing. I used to be an operatic singer, and even in my times of my worst self-hate and depression.
So I'm guessing they changed as an adult?
I liked singing.
When you were sitting there with Dr. Gordon or any other doctors that you were meeting with pre-transition, did they warn you about not being able to sing? Did they warn you? Did you know it was going to affect your voice?
They lied or they were misinformed. They told me that I would have a normal male voice. I would have the same thing but be able to sing in the male range. What actually happens is the larynx grows, but everything around it does not grow, so it's crushed, and I can't use it anymore.
The side effects started.
Yeah, it sounds like if she's speaking the truth, it does sound like she had a bad experience here, a really bad experience.
Happening very quickly to me.
But like, so they found one person out of how many? Like we can hear the same fucking stories with cancer treatments.
For some people it takes a lot longer, but I noticed them like very early on. And so the ultimate thing that caused me to stop was losing my singing voice, which was such a huge part of my identity as well. But I also suffered
What is
from
it with singers and detransitioning and then going on right-wing media to talk about this shit?
Of health side effects early on.
I'm trying not to cry. It's heart-wrenching. It was always a shred of something I didn't hate about myself, and it's gone. I miss it a lot, and I miss, singing for my mom. My boyfriend has a little 3-year-old, and I wish I could sing for her the way I used to, but it sounds terrible. I hate the sound I make.
I am happy for the...
So I want to know if she wasn't told to live like a man for a while, like before hormones or anything. Like just present yourself as the way you want to present yourself and see how that feels before we try anything. Because it sounds like she was an adult when she transitioned. That's what it sounds like to me. So I am very confused as to why the clinic would allow her to transition. Either she's lying or that clinic needs to be shut down. She's in a Veritas video, so I'm leaning towards she's lying about something. Or they edited it in a very bad way to make it look worse, like Veritas does.
The opportunity to share my story with Project Veritas, because I think you are doing some amazing work. I think it's so important to expose these providers that are fast-tracking children towards medical.
And that's like a proof they are lying. Like Kat Kattinson, that she is a grifter of the highest order. Anyone who takes Project Veritas remotely serious should be seen as charlatans, should be seen as grifters. They are not to be taken serious at all if they know they're speaking to Veritas happily.
And honestly,
like everyone can be fooled, but she just admitted to being the fool.
Medical abuse. And I think it's appalling that children even younger than I was are being, indoctrinated and put on this conveyor belt towards sterilizing themselves and destroying their health.
Now, despite these admissions from providers and patients, legislation across the country is being passed to further distance parents from the decisions of providers on their children's health care. Project Veritas thanks those who came forward to share their personal stories with us.
2 people. 2 motherfucking people. That is all. Those are the people that come forward to talk to us.